Oh, wow. Hey, there we are. I didn't realize I was kind of looking kind of dark lighting in here, but it's peace and quiet. So I'm back. Sorry it's taking so long. I had no internet for some time, which you're at a loss when you don't have that in this day and age. And then my grandkids came to visit me. Actually, I took them because my daughter-in-law is very sick with grandbaby number 6, so we thought we'd help her out. Well, it turned out that my son had these, well, he thought they were spider bites. Those don't look like spider bites. And then they thought, well, they're bed bugs. That doesn't look like that either. He did a virtual doctor, and he turned out he had shingles. They're so young to have that. Anyway, so it's a good thing we had the kids. For a week, they got to rest. But grandma's realized slow down a lot. 3 kids under the age of 3 is a lot of energy going on, and my energy was up and then it went down. And I'm back. I've got the lesson already, and I'm going to catch up here in 3 days. So we're going to do a lot of movement here. So Mosiah 25 to 28, stories. We love these stories. So the very first part of Mosiah 25, verses 1 through 6, they're just telling all their stories, what's happened to them. These are good people. Love to hear. It's like bearing your testimony. We love to hear someone's story, what increased their testimony. But what I love in verse 7, here I go again with that word, because I do love the scriptures. Verse 7 says, and when Mosiah had made an ending of the records, his people who tarried in the land were struck with wonder and amazement. Can you just see that? They went, wow. Has that happened to you before? The other verse is on 8 when they talk about being delivered. And I like how they talk about how they felt in verse 8. He said they felt exceedingly great joy. Have you ever had something that you just couldn't wait to tell somebody? It was oozing from you so much joy. So I love the description there. Then in verse 17, they go on to say that they desire to be baptized. It's your first step and a desire. And then they set up the church in verses 20 and 21 because there has to be an organization. Some people say I don't believe in organized religion. Well, it has to have an organization because God is organized. That's how he built this earth, was through organization. And verses 20 to 21 also teaches that you got to have first faith. That's why I tell everyone, my testimony, everything is based on faith. Let's get back to the basics. Faith is the first thing. And then we have repentance, of course. And you have to have the desire to join. I love it when I'm going out with the missionaries and they're talking about the desire to join. You can just see the light in their eyes. But there's something to remember, that conversion is a miracle. It just doesn't happen. It is a miracle. It takes sometimes a long time, but it usually takes some time to grow and develop. Something I was going to show you is that, did you know how pickles are made? Has anybody ever made pickles? No, Sister Walker has. And it starts, I'm sorry, this is a cut up one. We like cucumbers. But this is a cucumber. It's cut off right there. That's what it was before it became a pickle. It's this. So it took a lot of process to become that. And that's part of what that conversion is, and changing the whole makeup. So you can Google how to make pickles. It's actually not that hard. If you like pickles, that'd be really good to get cucumbers on sale. So part of that conversion to be, everyone has to have their own personal conversion story. I have several that helped me get to the point that I am now. I thought I was converted when I was younger. And as I get older and I grow and grow and grow more, my testimony, I realized I just had like a little baby when I was like milk, just like milk from a baby. And now it's feeling like I'm more like I have meat, I have a steak, because I've had so many experiences and feelings and emotions that, especially the experiences, I think I'm a person that goes by, when something happens, I don't take it for granted. So anyway, that's a personal conversion. It has to happen to everybody. So we're going to go on to chapter 26, and we're going to talk about Alma the Younger. Wow, what a guy. In the very first part, it talks about verses 1 through 5, there was a rising generation. That means they kind of forgot. It was their parents and their grandparents that got delivered, and so they remembered God this rising generation, just they were non-believers. They just said, kind of like I feel like sometimes some people are today. And there was talked about there was one son. It's interesting that they said one of the sons of Alma. They use flattery and deceit. And in verses 9 through 13, it talks about that Alma was troubled. I've been troubled with sometimes some choices that my family makes or my friends make. And I love it in verse 15 through 23. Guess who comforts him? It's Christ. Christ is the comforter. So here's some steps to take if someone is going wayward or being kind of like an Alma. How can we help when someone's being difficult with this? And do you know someone? What are some steps that you can do to do that? That's all in chapter 26. First, you have to recognize it. Then it says, seek Christ. So you pray, you think, you ponder about this, you take it to Christ, and you do everything in your power just to love them. You never know if it's going to be you or somebody else or something that happens that's a catapult to change them. In chapter 27, we go into 27. There was no persecution for a time, which means anytime there's no persecution, that's equal to peace. And the people listened because their parents had taught them that it was important. And so the people that listened had, the parents, they watched them, their example. This is what's so important as a parent that we set an example. But in verse 8 of chapter 27, it says, now the sons of Mosiah were numbered among the unbelievers, and also one of the sons of Alma. So it's not all of them, it's one of them. And he is very good at speaking, and people listen to him and they follow him. And because he wasn't following Christ at that time, it was like a stumbling block to everyone. They well, look at the son here, which is kind of sad that people do judge that way, but that's what happens. But in verse 11 of that chapter, an angel appeared. Did an angel really come down? But it talked about it being thunderous. And what that means is when thunder strikes, or you hear thunder when lightning strikes, then you listen. It's got your attention. Then 25 through 26 of that chapter, verse 25 through 26, he talks about being born again. And what I love about it is the church community prayed for them. How often are we asked to pray for somebody in our ward? How often do you think I pray for one of you when something's troubling you? I do. I think about it all the time, especially now. I don't know what's going on in your lives, and I feel like we've just missed so much. But it talks in also in chapter 27, verse 29, he was snatched. When you snatch somebody, you grab them, you take them out of the danger. So he said he was snatched. In verse 36, it talks about being instruments. And 37 is to publish peace. And what does publish peace mean usually? Missionary work. Yes, missionary work. All right. So what gives them hope for people that what gives us hope for those that are trying to destroy? In this chapter, if you read verse 14 and 19 through 24, this gives you the hope. In the long run, we know who's going to win. We already know the outcome of this movie we're in, story we're in, whatever is happening to this time. We know what the outcome is. It's just getting there. It's a struggle. So let's go on to chapter 28. And I want you to look at verse 1. It talks about how they selected. And it said that they took a small number of them and returned to their father, the king, and desired of him that he would grant unto them that they might, with those that they had selected, to go up to the land of Nephi, that they might preach the things that they had heard. So they selected. I look at that like the missionary work. When you put in your mission papers, you are selected to go where you go. I was shocked when I got my mission call. I really thought I was going to go to California because I'd only been there once in my life. By the age of 17, I'd only been there once. And I just knew it was going to be California. And so when my dad read my call over the phone, because I was at BYU going to school, and he said, "You've been called to San Diego, Chile." And I'm like, "What?" But it was Santiago, Chile. Anyway, I know to this day, I just had a mission reunion on Sunday with my mission president. He's 91 years old. His wife has passed away. But there were at least 50 or 60 of us on, it wasn't a Zoom, it was Google Meet. And it was so cool because we related some of our testimonies and our feelings and the spirit that was there. And I know that was the right mission for me. So they had a purpose. I like in verse 2 that it says they're going to cure the hatred. Don't we need that today? We need to cure the hatred that's infesting our communities. And the way that begins is it begins with us and what's on our heart. And verse 3, they talked about they trembled for their souls. I have felt that way when some of my family is not making a good choice, or some friends that I know, I tremble for them. I do. But I know I have to just love them and be their friend, be a good example. In verse 4, they talked about that they suffered anguish, and they want to pledge in verse 5 and 7, they want to deliver them. So there's lots of steps in this that go with the missionary work. I love their desire in there. That's just so cool. And many of you will be going out on your mission soon, so you'll feel that desire. In verse 12, it talks about a desire beyond measure. Now, one thing I did want to point out here is that when Alma was repenting, talks about it, it's like me in this backpack. I used to take a backpack to church all the time with my little kids and everything. And it kept getting heavier and heavier. And I'm like, why is this so heavy? When I opened it up, I realized each of my kids had put like their scriptures in there, or something they got from class, or some cookies or anything in there. And it got heavier and heavier because I was carrying everybody else's burden. And then I looked in there, and you know what else was in there? Should I keep carrying this around? No, I should not. I should get rid of this out of my backpack. And then it would be a lot easier. And that's part of that repentance. The other thing is, I like the story of taking a lemon. So that's a real lemon. Isn't that cool? Someone gave me a whole bunch off their trees. I've been making lots and lots of recipes with these. If you take a lemon, it's tart. But if you sweeten it up, make lemonade, how much better is it? So when you're doing missionary work, think about that. All given lemons, you go out there, you sweeten it up for them, make it lemonade. And the ending of chapter 28 talks about the Urim and Thummim. So if you've ever wondered what it looked like or where it's always been there. So that's pretty cool to look at. So maybe you can stop the video right now and read verses 13 through 16 on the Urim and Thummim. And also in 17, it talks about the Jaredites' history. So you kind of know where the Jaredites come from. And why must we have all these records? Why do we need to have these records in verse 20 of chapter 28 talks about to preserve the records. Why? Why was it so important for Nephi to go back and get the brass plates from Laban? We need to know our history. We need to teach our children our history. Something very cool happened recently. Back in January, I think it was. I have my dad's journals from his mission. He's one of the first missionaries in the 20th century, 19th century to go to South Africa. And he even had to take a boat 3 months. It's a great story. But he had these journals, and they're in great condition. I wish I could bring them to you, but I'm going to tell you what happened. So my son uploaded them to Family Search, a few excerpts, and the church contacted me. They're actually copying old missionary journals, and I found out they even want my journal because I was in Chile in the 80s, and that was like, we were baptizing like crazy. It was growing so fast. So they have asked for my journals, which will be next, but they personally came to my house with gloves, picked up my dad's journals. They're copying them. I had to sign all these waivers. I will get them back, but they'll be on there for other people to read. He has some great stories in there. when I get them back, I'll show them to you. It's very, very cool because they're just tiny little books, but it's in his own handwriting. And even back then, they had some issues and problems. He was thrown in jail several times, and they weren't allowed to preach. It was in South Africa, so they were not allowed to preach of anyone except the white folk, and then any others. They weren't allowed to teach them. But my dad talks about befriending them and wishing they could. He didn't understand why the government wouldn't let him there. So it's just kind of interesting that it's always gone on. Anyway, my dad's journal should be back. I leave a challenge for you. I want you to think of somebody to pray and fast for this next week. And keep your family records. Upload them to Family Search. When you remember a memory, someone started remembering all these stories about my dad as their grandfather. These are my nieces and nephews. And I'm like, these should be uploaded to Family Search. So my one niece has uploaded these stories of what the grandkids remember, which is very, very cool. Anyway, I love you. I miss you. And I'm going to do some quick other 2 lessons within the next 2 days, and we'll get all caught up because we are now in an exciting time, and we're starting the Summer of Heroes. So we have lots of heroes coming up, and you'll find out who they are. And as we go, I know right now we're thinking Gideon's probably one. Yeah, he's definitely a hero. And you're going to learn in the last chapter of 29 in Alma what happens to Gideon. So stay tuned for that one. I hate to say it, I don't want you to think it's all good and glory, but we think of Alma as the war stories coming up, but actually it's also the war against evil. And we're saving souls. So it's soul saving is really what Alma's all about. Anyway, have a nice evening, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Actually, we're going to catch you up week by week. And if you have any comments or any questions, please put them below, and I'll get back to you. Miss you guys. And I'll put those videos up so that you can watch some videos to go with this. Remember the challenge.